In this video, we're going to highlight the 3-thread overlock stitches possible on the bernette b64 airlock serger and the b68 airlock serger. Hi, I'm Sarah from sewingmastery.com, and we're in the middle of doing a complete series of free video tutorials on the bernette airlock sergers. There's a complete playlist of all the video tutorials we have created in the description below. We're starting out with the serger currently threaded for the traditional 4-thread overlock, which we have done in this video here. So if you haven't gone through the basics of 4-thread overlock stitching and how to set up for it, start by watching that video first. But this one is the one where we're going to work through all the steps, ending up at a 3-thread rolled hem. Between the 4-thread overlock, the 3-thread overlock, and a rolled hem, those are my 3 most commonly used stitches on a serger. We're going to get into where you would use a 3-thread overlock stitch and what's the difference between using your right needle and your left needle. If you haven't already, find the link in the description below that will take you to where you can print off the list of all the stitches, the settings, and which thread you're using for which stitch. We'll be focusing in this video, stitch number 3, the 3-thread overlock wide using the left needle. Stitch number 4, the 3-thread overlock narrow using the right needle. Stitch number 7, the 3-thread narrow seam. And our grand finale, stitch number 8, the 3-thread rolled hem. I like this page too because it also shows us how the stitches are going to look once you've threaded them correctly. And if you're doing your stitches like I am with different colors of thread, you'll easily see what changes as we change from stitch to stitch. If you're working with the bernette b68 airlock serger and cover stitch model, a reminder that we are only using the yellow, green, blue, and red for the 3-thread overlock stitches and the rolled hem. So the purple one at the end and the purple air threaded tube off here on the right side are not in use for the overlock stitches. That's only going to be used when you're doing cover stitch. You're using the loopers that are closest to the needle. The cover stitch looper is the one closest to you, coming out from the left side of the serger. Keep in mind that this looper lines up with these 3 holes when you're doing cover stitch or chain stitch. But for right now, our needles are in the back position when doing any normal serger overlock stitches. I find going from a 4-thread to a 3-thread is one of the easiest because you're going to start by just taking a pair of scissors, and let's go ahead and start by going from a 4-thread to a narrow 3-thread. That means we're going to be removing the yellow thread from the left needle, and you must remove the left needle. If you leave it in, there's going to be a little extra loop of thread coming around that needle, so definitely remove it when you're not using it. To make this easier to remove, lift up the presser foot and remove the thread. Now yes, I am pulling that backwards, but it's also so little of the difference. A lot of you will like to cut it at the top and pull it out the back. The last thing you need to do anytime you're not using thread is remove the spool from the back of the serger. If you don't and you leave this dangling, what's going to happen is it's going to find one of its friends and it will come back in with its friends, and now you have a different problem to solve. So for all my students, I always tell them, take off the spool that you're not using and set it aside. A quick way to remove this needle is you can lower the presser foot back down. I'm going to turn the hand wheel so my upper looper is out of the way. Reach for the screwdriver in the front area of the serger where all the accessories are kept, and also the needle threader. This little guy, which we teach you how to use in the original threading video. Again, we'll link that right up here for you to check out. But on this end, there's a small little hole, and we're going to use that to catch the needle. Now you can usually get your hands in here and catch it, but this is just a handy tool so it doesn't fall into the machine. You'll notice at the top, the screws are labeled A is the top one for the left needle, and B is the bottom one for the right needle. Once you start loosening the screw, do keep in mind these screws are very short, so after a couple turns, give your needle a little wiggle, and if it's ready to come out like a loose tooth, it will drop right down and come right out of the machine. Immediately tighten that screw all the way back in. Now it's going to go back in a lot further than it was to loosen it because of course the needle isn't in and up through that shaft area. But go ahead, make sure it's nice and tight. If you don't tighten it down, the serger and the vibration will probably loosen that screw, and that's not a fun one to try to find on your floor. Let me show you the best place to store this extra needle. Have you tried out the little pin cushion off to the right of your machine? Your needles will store right there until they're ready to go back in. If these videos have been helpful, it's customary to click the like button as you watch free video tutorials on YouTube. This helps us continue to make free content on future sewing machines, sergers, and embroidery machines. If you still see a little thread from when you clipped your yellow thread here, don't worry, it will come out once we put some thread through. Get in the habit of putting your accessories back where they belong, and then they'll always be there for when you need them. And remember, the door needs to be closed for the serger to run. I often use a 3-thread for just a single layer of fabric. If you're noticing a little gap between the edge of your looper threads and the edge of your fabric that was cut off, all you need to do is adjust the cutting width to leave a little bit more fabric in the overlocked edge. Since you're not serging on 2 layers of fabric, there's not as much thickness to kind of fill that in. So being that this is a flatter single layer surface, there could be a little threads hanging off the edge. Now, I will tell you, it's not a problem, but a lot of people will tell me, oh my gosh, my tensions are off. Well, all it is there's just not enough fabric to fill it in. To dial this in perfectly, adjust the knife to be further away from the needles to give you a little bit more fabric to fill in the overlock stitch. Can you see the difference? This side has a little bit more fabric and comes up and kisses the edge of the looper threads. If I want to overlock all the edges of my fabrics before sewing them together, what I'll probably do is run the edge of my fabric right next to the knife so not to cut off any seam allowance I might need later. This is how it's going to look. Just line it up so your knife is just barely skimming off the edge. Maybe if there's any little thread sticking out, this is going to even them up. I do recommend that you cut off just like a sliver, and it will actually keep your serger a little bit cleaner because it's coming off in one little tiny fine continuous piece of fabric instead of just slicing off the little hairs along the edge. You can see that that would keep your serger a little cleaner. Now, if you love this stitch, but you want it to be a little wider, or you're actually working on some fabric that's a lot thicker than, say, what I'm working on, a piece of cotton, you will want to be using the needle in the left needle position. Now, here's a little trick. Remember I told you you had to take the left needle out if you're doing a narrow 3-thread overlock with the right needle? Well, if you were to do a wide 3-thread overlock, you can definitely remove the thread from the right needle, the one on the inside, and nobody will know if you don't remove it. It will just leave a little hole in your fabric, but depending on your fabric, that might not make any difference at all. You've actually done the very first step on our journey to the perfect rolled hem. You've switched the serger from a 4-thread to a narrow 3-thread. I like to always have my students do this step by step and see the progression, changing one thing at a time so you can see actually what the change is doing. The next thing I'm going to have you do is change the stitch finger from N to R. This white button, when pulled towards you to the R location, removes the stitch finger down near the needle. If you haven't seen this for yourself, I'm going to have you push it back in and see that part that moves back near the needle and also what happens when you remove it. Now, a little note, for the first time you do a rolled hem, I want you to leave yourself a sticky note somewhere on your serger that says, don't forget to put the stitch finger back to normal. A common thing that happens is that people will do a rolled hem, finish up their project, off they go, and 2 weeks later they come back to their serger, thread it for a 4-thread, and wonder why the stitch doesn't look just right. It's because the stitch finger never got put back to normal. It's a simple fix, but sometimes as a newbie, you don't don't realize what the problem is. So just make sure for normal stitching, it's at N, and for rolled hem only, it's at R. Have you noticed I haven't changed anything with tension or stitch length just yet? We'll do that once we get to the full rolled hem. Now this is going to be considered a narrow 3-thread edge. See the difference in size? You're noticing because the stitch finger is not supporting the fabric, it wants to kind of fall or curl. And this is the start of a rolled hem. This stitch is really pretty if you're going around a piece of like silk, chiffon, or rayon, making yourself a nice little scarf from some fabric that you picked up along your travels. This edge is very delicate and much more sophisticated, being that it is a smaller size. Now for your official rolled hem. Start by taking your lower looper tension from the default 4 and go up 3 numbers. I usually have people start around 7, and that way you have the lower looper, the stitches on the underneath side, pulling the upper looper all the way around. So instead of the loopers meeting along the edge, this one is much tighter. And what's going to happen is it's going to pull this thread all the way around the edge. So what we'll see is all blue upper looper on the top side and the back side when we're done. Front side, back side, all blue. So when you're doing a rolled hem, whatever color is your dominant color, you really just need to put it in your upper looper. Your needle thread can be close to that color, and whatever you put in the lower looper is not even going to be seen. It's going to be tucked in on the back side, and hardly anybody will ever see it. Now the last thing to change would be if you wanted these stitches to be closer together. Think like your sewing machine, and that means to shorten the stitch length to give it more of a satin stitch look. Turn your stitch length from 2.5 down to 1. The difference is stunning. Now, it does take a little longer for you to put that many more stitches on your fabric, but depending on the look that you're after, this bold look, especially with the contrast color, looks amazing. We're also going to be doing a video on decorative threads, and decorative threads in a rolled hem will help fill this in even more. Since we're just using normal sewing thread, it's not really going to fill it in solid, but if you use something a little bit thicker through your upper looper, you will have the results that you're looking for. So just to recap, to get to a rolled hem, we tightened the lower looper tension. We shortened the stitch length, or to the length you desire. We moved the stitch finger to R position, and we took out the left needle. To go back to a 4th thread, just do everything opposite. I would recommend starting by pushing that stitch finger back into normal so you don't forget. And the trick to putting your needle back in, reach for your screwdriver and your needle threader. Pick up the needle from where you stored it. Drop the needle into the needle threader with the flat side towards the back. I recommend putting the point side down first and coming up right beside the other needle. Hold it up, loosen the screw until the needle threader can pop the needle to its highest position. And tighten it down. Double check that the left needle is higher than the right needle. That's the way you know you have placed it at the proper height for the serger to work correctly. Thread your needle and return everything to normal settings, and you're back to a 4th thread. Anytime your pattern calls for a 3-thread or rolled hem settings, follow this video once again to remind you the easiest way to set up your serger. I hope you'll check out all of our videos in the playlist listed at the end of this video. If our videos have been helpful, it's customary to always click like after you watch the free information. And we'd love it if you'd subscribe to our YouTube channel as well.